SiriusXM keeps truck drivers informed and entertained with coast-to-coast coverage across the U.S. and Canada. Listen to what you love from anywhere on the road with 24/7 ad-free music plus sports, news, talk, and comedy. Hear your favorites on every haul for just $6.06 a month. Sign up at SiriusXMFleet.com. Welcome to The Long Haul, the podcast dedicated to empowering small carriers and owner-operators to drive their business forward. I'm your host, Adam Wingfield, bringing you insights from industry leaders, real-world success stories, and strategies to help you navigate the road to profitability. Whether you're just getting started or looking to take your fleet to the next level, this is the show where trucking meets opportunity. So buckle up, it's time to go the distance. Welcome back to The Long Haul, a podcast that's definitely dedicated to my small carriers, my small owner operators out there, providing you with strategy, providing you with insights, guidance from all over the place. And today's guest knows the numbers that make or break a trucking business, and he's not afraid to break them down. Rob McCutcheon is the Vice President of Strategy and Growth at TAFS, one of the biggest names in factoring. With a background that cuts across financial services, logistics, and tech, Rob has helped thousands of carriers understand their cash flow, fuel costs, and freight strategies better than anybody could. If you've ever factored a load, swiped a fuel card, or struggled to keep the lights on, this is the conversation that you don't want to miss. So without further ado, I'm excited to have a conversation with my man, Rob. What's going on, Rob? How you doing, man?
Hey, Adam. How are you, man?
I'm doing good.
Doing well.
Doing good. We were just before we jumped on, we were just talking about barbecue in Kansas City, man. You guys got it down hands pat, man. I know some Texas folk that listen to this that might disagree, but
I think it's different. They're different kinds of barbecue. So, I mean, some of them like the more meat style. We have the sauce up here in KC. So,
yeah,
it's all good either way.
Man, KC got a mixture of both, though. I can't just say you got great sauce, you got great style, and trust me that they're not a sponsor of us anyway, but Jack Stack's got to have one of the best barbecues I've ever had.
Yeah, Jack Stack's been phenomenal. There's so many good ones here in Kansas City. If you make it past 2 years as a barbecue joint here,
yeah,
then you've got something good.
Yeah.
This place is picky for it. So,
Oh yeah. All right, well, let's rewind a little bit, man. What pulled you into the freight world, and how'd you end up leading strategy at one of the largest factoring companies in trucking?
Yeah, so originally I came in marketing, and so whenever I came in to work in the factoring world and the logistics world, I didn't know anything about it, which I think happens to a lot of us that end up in the logistics market. Is we know about it, but we don't really know about it until we start diving in and start learning all the stuff of it. I think a big advantage for me was the fact that coming to this company, TAFS. It was also connected to one of the larger trucking companies in the country, a brokerage, a leasing company. At one point, we had insurance for trucking. And so I got a very big, well-rounded approach to coming into this industry and seeing it from a bunch of different avenues. But at the end of the day, my skill set kind of fit more into the factoring world. And so the financial piece of it and how to reach truckers and education and that type of the market is something that I was really passionate about and saw good results from it. And so I've kind of just stuck with it and worked my way up through the organization, with getting results in the marketing phase to branching out into different products and doing a fuel card and overseeing a fuel card program. And then obviously just overall strategy for what our company offers, the product that we offer, how to make it better, how to make the client experience better, how to help our retention rates, how to help our reputation, all those type of things. I've kind of slowly but surely kind of built my role into what it is today.
So for the folks that don't know, everybody doesn't know the journey of TAFS. They just see the factoring side of it, but they don't know the arm that was actually associated with a carrier. Can you walk folks back to where TAFS originated from?
Yeah, so TAFS actually started back in 2007 as kind of like an idea. Actually, that there were other companies that offered factoring at the time that were out there, but the primary company for it was Trans Am Trucking, and Trans Am Trucking is a large refrigerated carrier out of Kansas City here, Olathe, Kansas, and they had an idea of, hey, we see that this is something that's in demand. Cash flow is always something that carriers are looking for a solution. And most of the other factoring companies that are out there are, associated either with a bank or with another brokerage or whatever. There's not very many associated with an actual asset-based carrier
Yeah.
out there. And so they felt they could bring some types of advantages to the market with being an asset-based carrier, and then also offering a factoring company. So it started with just a few people back in 2007, and within 7 to 8 years, it was a top 20 factoring company, and then by 2020, 2021, we were in the top 10, and now with the combined powers of where we're at with being acquired by eCapital, we're in the top 5. And so
Wow.
it's slowly but surely grown. And one of the things I'm proudest about it is, if you look at all of our folks that work here, especially in the top leadership positions, that they've all been here 9, 10, 12, 14, 15 years.
Yeah.
And it really helps when you have an organization that has a lot of continuity, and folks that have experience in the trucking world that used to work maybe at the Trans Am Trucking Company side, and then kind of made their way over to the TAFS side, and vice versa. I think it was a really good depth of experience that a lot of people had, and it really helps kind of like really get down into the nitty gritty of why trucking companies need it, and then what can we offer that makes us unique, that can help a trucking company more than maybe another factoring company that's out there.
When you first got into trucking finance, what was one big myth that you had to unlearn about how the industry really worked? Because, obviously that would be something that you would have to deprogram yourself from.
Yeah, I think in general, you don't even realize that brokerages and the shippers and the brokerages that are out there, almost all of them have very slow pay terms.
Yeah.
And you just think about it, if you're outside the trucking world, that hey, you deliver a load, they're going to pay you, and you just make that assumption out there. But that's a much harder process, as a lot of people learn when they get into trucking. It's a lot harder process for them to deliver a load, and then get all your paperwork put together, your BOL and your rate con and everything, and sent to a factoring company, and or you're billing the broker or the shipper directly, and just how long it takes to get paid from that. I mean, everybody has their own set amount of terms. Some of them are 60 days, some of them are 90 days, some of them are 30 days. And that's something that everybody has to learn. And a lot of times when you're a driver for a trucking company, that experience is you get paid every Friday.
Yeah.
And so when you go to owning your own business, that's gone. You don't get paid every Friday anymore. And so that's the biggest adjustment you have whenever you start your own business is like, okay, well, I used to get paid every Friday, and now I am invoicing people for them to pay. And then I have all these bills that I have to pay during the month. And so fuel, insurance, truck payment, like all these things that you're paying throughout the month. But if you're waiting 30 days to get that payment, it makes it really, really difficult to do. And so I think that's one of the biggest assumptions is you just assume you're going to continue to get a paycheck every week, and that's not the case.
Well, here now, I want to take a few minutes and really speak into the raw part of freight factoring, because you're going to have people that sing praises, and you're going to have people that throw pitchforks, and there's obviously there's rights on both sides to feel that way. There's a lot of noise out there. Some carriers say factoring saved their business. Others say that they got burned. Why is that reputation so split? I just want to be 100% honest. You don't have to name names, but why is it that the reputation is so split? And what should small carriers actually be asking before they even sign a factoring deal?
Yeah, I think with factoring, the part where people get kind of torn multiple directions is on the contract for the
Yeah.
factoring, and understanding what factoring actually is. Some people look at it as, hey, that's my paycheck, and this company is in charge of paying me. When essentially all factoring really is it is advancing you funds on a job that you did, and so they're buying that invoice from you with the expectation that they will be able to collect that money from the person you did the job for 30, 40 days down the road. And so I think the first part of it with everyone is I think when people are upset with factoring companies, a lot of times it's maybe they don't understand the contract. They didn't ask some of the questions that they had in the contract. Um, Maybe they thought that this is how it was supposed to work, and it's actually this way. And I think my biggest thing is like, hey, do your research, ask as many possible questions as you can, understand recourse, non-recourse, understand all the fees that are associated, understand the term. And most people, once they understand all those things, really the only issue that you'll see is if you get recourse or charged back, that causes a sour taste in people's mouth down the road. Uh,
Absolutely.
and so I think you just have to understand, well, why is that happening? What can I do to help prevent that? Because there are several carriers that once they're well versed in understanding how the process works, they will never have any issues. They'll see, unless a broker declares bankruptcy or something like that, that's out of everyone's control. But as far as understanding your aging and things that you've got to do whenever you have a factoring company, hey, understand where maybe I ran 10 loads this month, and 5 of those loads are already paid. But maybe there's 5 that are out there, and one of them sitting there hasn't been paid for 40 days. And once it gets to a certain number of days with any factoring company, that's when you should start to worry a little bit of, well, when is this broker going to pay my factoring company back? Because eventually, when the bill comes due, it's gonna come back on the carrier. And so the factoring company, some of them are better than others at communicating these things to carriers. We try to do as transparent of a job as we possibly can to make sure that there is a portal that you can log into 24/7, a mobile app that you can log into 24/7 to see this aging and see where it sits at. Another issue that people run into down the road with factoring is, say factor load for $1,000, and then that broker only paid the factoring company $900. So we call that a short pay. And so a short pay could be something that causes the next invoice you submit to have $100 taken out of it, so the factoring company is made whole. And so a lot of the reasons are, it's like, well, why did that broker do that? Why did they only pay $900? And so if you're the carrier, you've got to be like, okay, well, maybe I invoiced the factoring company wrong, or maybe the broker decided to charge some fee for being late, or they charged a lumper fee, or whatever it may be. But there's always a reason why they decide to short pay. And then same thing, if you're able to understand some of those kind of key points, you have very little issues with factoring companies. Again, I can't speak for all of them. I just know my company, and I know the complaints we get for sure. It's always going to be an issue because you're dealing with people's money. And so you want to be as accurate as you possibly can be, and you want to be as consistent as you can be. But at the same time, you want to make sure that everyone on all sides of an agreement understand every little piece of that agreement and understand all the things and the expectations that are going to be there. Because there are definitely things carriers can do to help prevent anything from being charged back, or help prevent a short pay from happening. And again, I would say if you looked at complaints on Google and complaints on any of these places that are out there, those are going to be the primary things that people complain about, is like, hey, I want to get out of my contract, but why did they want to get out of the contract? It's because maybe something happened where they got charged back, or a carrier wanted to factor a load with a broker that we don't approve.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reason we do that is to protect everyone, because we know that maybe someone else got stiffed by that broker, or someone else got same thing from a shipper perspective. And so all the risk things that we put in there, into a contract, into a relationship, are meant to protect all parties from getting into a tough situation where somebody's going to have to foot the bill for somebody not paying at the end of the day.
So a lot of factoring companies they push that fast pay benefit, right? You don't have to wait the 30 days, you don't have to wait a week. You get paid tomorrow if you get it submitted to us by 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just making an example. But what are less obvious levers in a factoring agreement that can help or hurt a small fleet's cash flow?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the biggest things I always look at is so not only the speed, like you just said, but the availability. And so,
It's huge.
trucking is 24/7, and so a lot of factoring companies work 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. And so one of the things that we realized initially right away is, well, why are we doing 8 to 5 Monday through Friday when our carriers and our clients are going literally 24/7? And so we did 365 days a year funding, and so we opened it up to where we're available more often. And that's not something that every factoring company does. Another thing a factoring company can do for a carrier is we talk about fuel cards. Fuel cards allow you to get huge discounts, and you're able to, in a lot of cases, offset the cost of factoring by how much you're going to save by using that fuel card. And so there's several factoring companies out there now that do bundle pricing with fuel cards, and if you do this many gallons of fuel on this fuel card, you're going to save 25, 50, 60 cents a gallon, which can add up real quick for a factoring or for a trucking company to be able to save dollars. And then same thing with other ways that we can negotiate. The advantage we have as a factoring company is when you have thousands of carriers that work with you, you have buying power. And so I can go to a tire company and negotiate a really deep discount for our carriers. I can go to a fuel card merchant, like our primary partner is TA Petro. So I can go negotiate with TA Petro to get a huge discount for our carriers. And so we try to do as many of those type of partnerships as we can to lower that cost for the carrier, so they can use those discounts and pass those things on in order to lower their cost of running loads. And so I think one of the biggest things that we really focus on is really making sure that we have the cost savings, that we have the outside relationships. So maybe we have a relationship with a leasing company, or we have a relationship with an equipment finance company, or whatever it may be. And then also creating products internally that we know are going to be needed things. And so one thing that we try to do is we offer small business loans as well. And so say that maybe you don't have an invoice to factor and you still need funds, and you need fuel dollars or whatever it may be, or you need your truck needs something that's stuck in the shop. If you're consistent factoring with us, we'll automatically pre-qualify you for a business loan of a certain percent of your open AR, and we'll be able to get you funds very quickly, same day in a lot of cases, to be able to handle whatever you need to handle. We have carriers that use that service a ton. We have, we do lots of small business loans every single week, to be able to help with all those different things, whether it's insurance down payment and that type of stuff. And so I would say all those things, and then couple that on the top of it with education of just running a business. And so we've really tried to focus on coming on shows like this, and making sure we write the really solid articles that are how-tos with trucking companies, and understanding the financial pieces behind it, understanding what your brand means. We've done marketing training for helping trucking companies market their own business. Because at the end of the day, for us, the way we look at it is we cannot succeed unless the trucking company succeeds. And so if you go out of business as one of our clients, that hurts us just as well. I mean, so we want to make sure that every single company that we sign on, we are providing good resources for them to educate themselves. We're also providing ways for them to save dollars, and we're also making sure we're available 365 days a year for funds whenever they need it.
So when you look at it, the new authorities, and if you're starting up a new trucking company, Should every new authority factor, or is there a certain type of business model or revenue volume where it makes sense to go direct with brokers or shippers and skip factoring altogether? And I know that's I know that's not what you guys want to talk about, but it's one of those things that we
Oh
should talk
no,
about.
I 100% agree with you. Like that's factoring is not for everyone. That's it's not a one size fits all thing. If you have, especially a small trucking company, most of them do it out of necessity
Yeah,
because they have to factor because they don't have enough capital backing them to be able to float their payments for that
right.
30, 60, 90 days. And another thing that happens to them is, what if you have a truck breakdown? What if that insurance payment comes due and you just don't have enough money? And so a lot of times when people factor, it's mainly because they have to do it. I would 100% always recommend that if you can float your own cash, you should not use factoring. You should 100% try to do it on your own. But factoring is going to be there for a lot of the carriers that come in that they didn't realize how much it was going to cost, and
Yeah.
they're like, okay, now I need some help. I need to be able to use this speed up of cash flow in order to actually continue to pay my bills, and so I don't go out of business. And so, and then the same thing, like if you want to go direct to a shipper, that's the ideal thing that's the dream for any carrier.
Yeah.
And I would highly recommend that same thing is, but a lot of the shippers that are out there don't want to work with a one truck company, and they want to wait till somebody's a little bit more established out there. But if you can do it as a small trucking company and get that relationship built and get a direct shipper, then I think that's absolutely the way to go. It's just more difficult than as you probably know. There's a lot of difficulties with starting a brand new trucking company and without a lot of capital, and so that's what I think that you know you have to make the right decision for your business. It's factoring is not something that everyone should do.
So what's something you wish every small carrier understood about how factoring companies evaluate their risk or determine their rates between carriers?
Yeah, I think rate is pretty straightforward across the board with most factoring companies. What we're going to look at is we're essentially going to look at how much volume you can do, and so the higher volume you can do, the better rate you're going to get, and that's pretty simple across the board on whenever you're trying to do that stuff. But when it comes to risk, one of the things we look at is one, how many customers do you have?
Mhm.
Because if you are working for one big brokerage and you're hauling all your loads with that one big brokerage, one claim can sink your whole business. Yeah, and I'm sure I've seen some of the stuff you've helped train these guys
Yeah.
on diversifying your customer base and understanding who you're working with and whatnot. And so one of the things with us is like we tell our carriers, try to carry no more than 20% of your business with one
For one
particular
person.
customer.
Hmm.
And that's a huge piece. And that not only helps us as a factoring company to make sure that there's not so many ways to offset whenever a claim happens, because claims will happen. It's a matter of when, not if.
Right.
It's always going to happen in this industry. And so we look at risk in the way of, hey, we're going to try to protect you from working with brokerages that are going to uh, either not pay you or slow pay you or really mess up your cash flow. And so we're going to do our own due diligence on the back end. And this is where a factoring company really comes in handy to a carrier, is we have thousands and thousands of data points to look at when we work with brokers out there to know, hey, what's their average days to pay? Uh, they say that they're working at 30, but we actually know based upon how often we get paid from the broker on all of our carriers, how long it actually really is.
Right.
And so we have that data, and we can also see like, hey, if a broker is taking longer and longer and their pay terms over the last however many months have really slowed down, we can say, hey, we're going to put a yellow light on these guys. I would just be careful whenever you're trying to book loads with these guys, because they may be having financial issues themselves, and it could
100%.
put you in a tough spot. And so I think that's a big piece with factoring, and the risk side of it is that's what we're looking at, is we want to be able to make sure that our clients are carrying for good brokers that will pay them on time, and make sure that we give them the data and the information that they need to do credit checks anytime they want. Our team will literally provide real-time data to them on credit checks to make sure that they're working with the most reputable folks that are out there.
So just to shift gears a little bit, because that's a very, very good point in terms of how to establish that. But another big thing that supports the small carrier and owner operators is the fuel cards that you talked about earlier, because a lot of them, they don't have the buying volume where they can hedge fuel in advance and be able to save on spikes and fluctuations. So fuel cards are another one of those. Everybody offers them tools, but how does a carrier know they're actually saving money and they're just not adding another bill to manage?
Yes, fuel cards they're very complicated if you want to really dive in deep to what they can actually offer on a pricing perspective. Uh, but I would try to break it into two things. I would say you have a prepaid card, which is you're just using your factoring funds and it's put onto a card, and you're just using your actual dollars to buy fuel, and it's discounted for you. And then you have a credit line. And so when you have a line of credit, it's being backed by somebody. Sometimes it's a factoring company. Sometimes it's like one of the big providers out there, like the EFSs, the Comdatas, the A to Bs of the world that are out there. And sometimes they're backed by another third party or whoever it may be. Maybe it's directly a merchant like a Pilot or a
Yeah.
TA Petro, whoever it is. And so I would look at it in two ways. It's like if you want to do a prepaid card, those are very easy to find. It works best when you work with a prepaid card with a factoring company because they're putting the funds onto that card for you, versus a line of credit, which you can get in a lot of cases as well. But then you're going through a whole credit application process. They're looking at your credit score. They're looking at your financials. They're looking at all those things to make sure they're making a good decision because they're essentially extending credit to you during that time. And then you have the discount piece. And the discount side of this is, in a lot of ways, you are trying to see where your lanes are. And so the best advice I can give for a carrier when they're trying to choose a fuel card for themselves is, well, where are my lanes? What are the stops in my lanes that I know that I'm going to be going to all the time? And if you know where those are, and you're not afraid to go to maybe a mom and pop shop that's right across the street from a big guy, or just open to options, but it's still along your same route, then you can look at fuel cards that say, well, I have this particular vendor in my network of discounted locations, versus this other card has this particular vendor, and maybe that one's not in your lane, maybe this one is. And so I would ask them, one, make sure you find a fuel card that has the discounts that are in your lanes, and then you can look at the size of those discounts. A lot of people, the first question they ask when they're applying for a fuel card is, well, what's the discount? And if somebody can tell you that it's 20 cents every single time, that likely means that they have what's called a retail minus discount. And so if at the pump it's $4 a gallon and they have a retail minus 20, that's 20 cents. And so you're paying $3.80 a gallon every single time. The bigger discounts out there are what's called a cost plus discount. And so cost plus is, hey, what did that fuel merchant pay to buy that fuel at the bottom? And then they mark it up. So a lot of times you'll have a company that's out there, a big merchant out there, they'll buy fuel at a low price. Maybe they're charging $4 a gallon, but they bought it for $3 a gallon. And so that $1 is how they make their money. And so when it's cost plus, it is that cost. So maybe it was a $3 and say my price is a cost plus 20. Then you're paying $3.20 is the price that you're going to pay for that fuel for a cost plus 20. But the retail is still $4. And so you're saving 80 cents right there at the pump. And so a cost plus really depends on how much the fuel stop decides to mark up their fuel at the vendor. And so that's why a lot of times a company can say, well, we average this discount. If they're averaging some sort of a discount, it likely means that they're doing a cost plus. And so the lower you can get your cost plus discount, that's better for you as a carrier. Retail minus in a lot of places is just going to be, hey, it's very simple for me to understand, but it's probably not the better deal for you.
Yeah. So, what are some of the most common ways carriers are leaving money on the table when it comes down to those fuel programs?
I think the biggest one is they don't have enough discipline to fuel at the stops that they should fuel
What
at.
they plan for?
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, if you have a fuel card, I mean, I know looking at our system right now, we still have in-network pumping locations where you're going to get a discount, and then you have out-of-network locations where you get no discount at all.
Hmm.
And so it's still 65-35 in network. And so there's 35% of the transactions that are being fueled at stops that are outside of the network. And so I would just say those carriers are leaving money on the table because they're not fueling at those discounted locations and looking for the best price every time. They kind of, sometimes you'll get lazy and you'll be like, well, this stops right here,
Yeah.
and it's right here along the interstate, and I'm late right now, and so I need to do something fast, and so I'll fuel at this location just this time. And then you get used to it, and maybe your discipline just starts to lack, and you start going to locations that maybe even this one is, hey, I only got a 10-cent discount at this location, and the price is could have been better if I just waited to go 10 miles down the road and get one where I was going to get a lower price. And so I would say discipline is the biggest issue with making sure that you are saving as much money as you possibly can. Is, hey, really take that stuff serious. Every penny matters. If you think about it from a, sometimes you're putting 200 gallons into your truck, and when you put 200 gallons in, 10 cents a gallon turns out to be a lot of money.
It
And,
does.
and
It
so,
does.
even if you can go get 12 cents a gallon, that's 2 cents more when you're doing 200 gallons. That's a chunk of money right there as well. And so, I would say that 100% that make sure you are taking that very seriously of where you're fueling, and try to find the best price, the best actual bottom dollar price that you can pay, and stop worrying so much about the size of the discount, because there's one stop on this side of the road that charges $4 a gallon. The other one across the street's $3.50, and so you can get the $4 a gallon one, and they can save you 50 cents, but it's still the same price as the guy across the street. And so it's that price that you're going to actually be paying is what's most important, and discounts are less important.
So, Rob, from your vantage point, how should a growing fleet approach that fuel strategy differently than a one truck owner operator in that case?
Yeah, that's another huge point. I mean, the bigger you get as a trucking company, when you're starting to grow your fleet, you start getting your own negotiating power,
Mm.
and so you can actually, once you get to, I would say some of them will deal with you whenever you get to 25 trucks or so. Some of them maybe a little less, and then once you get to that size, you may want to just compare, is there a fuel card pricing going to be better than what I can get on my own when I deal direct with this company? And so maybe that this particular fuel stop is in your lanes a lot, and you want to go direct to them. Reach out directly to that fuel company and say, hey, I've got 20 trucks and I put 20,000 gallons in my tanks at your stops. I know you want to keep my business, and whatever it may be. You can be able to reach out directly to that stop and negotiate your own fuel pricing, and they'll even probably offer you their own fuel card directly just for those stops. And then you can get those to your drivers and whatnot. And so that's another piece that you look at. Also, once you have multiple drivers for your company, a lot of these fuel cards companies make this as a way to pay your drivers. And so you have every driver on your fleet, you give them a card to buy fuel, but you also give them a card for their payroll.
Yeah.
And you can actually make your payroll a much simpler process by just funding them directly to that card, and then they can go to the ATM with it. They can go just transfer it to their bank account directly. They can do a whole bunch of different things, but it lets them have control of the money that they're paid on. And so And then, as a trucking company, you can earn fees off of that. You can earn discounted rates, and then you can be able to have more competitive pricing whenever it comes to your fuel. And then you can build a whole program for your drivers, whether you're leasing carriers or doing all that stuff. And so you can reach out directly to a card company for that type of stuff. And so, Comdata, EFS, A to B, Relay Payments, Mudflap. There's a whole bunch of card companies out there that are really pushing into that market of trying to get as many trucking companies that use their platform as possible. And they'll even help you negotiate discounts directly too. So the bigger you get, the more buying power you get. And so I think once you get to a certain size, I think it makes sense. I think if you're to 90 trucks and up, you should 100% have your own fuel card program and own fuel card network, and then deal directly with vendors, because that's going to save you a ton of money.
I 100% agree with that. And when you get a small fleet that says, I want to grow, we think about growth strategy and moving a little bit away from just fuel. Let's just talk a little bit about just financial discipline, because, obviously that's very, very important when you combine it too. But when you got a small fleet that says, hey, I want to grow, I want to scale, that word gets thrown around a lot. What's the first financial blind spot that usually gets overlooked as you see it from where you sit?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. I think, retention of your drivers is a hidden cost.
Huge.
A lot of people get really, they don't realize how hard it is to find another driver and how much it costs to do that. I know, you talk to some of these large fleets that are out there, and, that they will pay companies, anywhere between $1,000 and $2,000 per hire.
And higher than that in some cases.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that's one that gets really forgotten about, because if you're running through drivers and your retention efforts are not great, you're costing yourself a lot of money to recruit and rehire and retrain and all those type of things. I think that's a huge one. Another one that I think that a lot of companies overlook is obviously the fuel piece of that. And I think between driver hiring and fuel, those are two really big costs that sometimes get overlooked. I know at the end of the day, whenever you're growing, you also get to a point where you're trying to look at the technology and things that can help you be more efficient. And so I think building that in is a piece, because once you get to a certain size, you need a TMS, and your staff grows, and maybe paying a little bit more for somebody that's a really good operations manager. I think you're going to see so many more benefits from getting somebody really good versus just somebody that you're going to have to train on the job. And so a lot of the best operations folks and dispatchers and sales folks that you're going to get you the best paying freight. Those guys are very much worth it, paying a little bit more to get some of the guys like that. And same thing, technology is always one of those hidden costs as well. Back office work, the billing and collecting piece, having good staff and having good processes in place for all that stuff, standard operating procedures. And there are a lot of consultants out there that can help you do that stuff as well. But I think when it's scaling time, there are so many critical decisions that you're making that are going to set you up for the future, or break you if you don't make the right decisions.
100%. And you've helped scale large transportation brands. If you were advising a 2-truck fleet owner, just for example today, what's the first move you have them set up for sustainable growth?
Yeah, I would want to make sure that really at the end of the day, are there processes? Do they have a very set process of, well, here's whenever I carry this load, am I taking a picture of my BOL? Am I sending it in? Am I saving this paperwork the right way? People overlook paperwork so often, and paperwork is extremely important. If you don't have good paperwork, then there's a chance that broker is just going to delay your payment even further, because you're going to go back looking for things. So I think starting from 2 trucks, you have to have very solid procedures in place and expectations for your people, that to make sure that that standard is set. And so when you set that standard, then you have the next thing, and then that's like costs, and understanding the costs, and understanding the discipline of the fuel, and understanding the discipline of these things. And it's you know you want to let your drivers have some freedom, but at the same time, you want to make sure that they understand that, hey, this is very important. Paperwork is important. Fueling is important. Making sure making good decisions out there is important. And then at the same time, like, how can I have the right partners in the industry to be able to help me do some of this back office work easier, more efficiently. So like that's what a factoring company, one of the things it brings to a table is essentially it's doing your billing and collecting. And if you don't have a factoring company, you're doing that on your own. And you have to be very organized and understand where all those payments are and know when to follow up. And you're going to have to call a broker and be like, hey, what's going on? Why have I not gotten paid on this one yet? Maybe it's because the paperwork is missing a page of the BOL and the pictures, or whatever it may be. And so I think those are huge pieces, is just trying to find all those processes, making sure you have all that dialed in, and then your costs, and you're going to be able to be in a much better position if you are very efficient with what you're doing, and making sure that you're getting obviously the right pay for what you need to do. I think we talk about that not only with the 20% or less on any customer, but you also want to make sure that you are completely surveying and using data to find out which lanes you should be hauling in, and make sure that the brokers you're working with are giving you a fair rate. The only way to know that is look at what everyone else is paying.
Yeah.
And use that data, and use some of these services. There's so many of them out there that I'm sure you've had folks from several of them on the show. But there's so many places out there that you can get real-time data of, hey, in this lane at this weight on this type of freight, this is the average rate. And you can look at your own stuff and say, hey, I'm not getting that. And so I need to figure out what I need to do in order to get the best paying freight for what lane I'm in.
Yeah, no, that's good. And just to shift out a little bit, marketing is one of your babies, and you talked about that in the beginning. When you think about a small carrier, and the time, and this is really great in discussion. What's one low cost marketing move that even a one truck operation, like an owner operator, single truck owner operator, could make to start to stand out better to potential shippers, the direct shippers especially?
I think the first thing you can do is just understand the difference between brand and your advertising. And so the big thing with a small carrier is, if you're a one truck guy, you are your brand. The way you talk to people, the way you
100%.
present yourself, the way you do any of these things whenever you go to a shipper for pickup, or go for drop off in any location. If you present yourself very professionally, and maybe invest in a T-shirt or a collared shirt with a logo on it from your company, and make sure people understand you, shake their hand, be a professional. That can go a long, long, long way. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard from carriers that were one truck guys, and they presented themselves very well at just a random location,
Mm,
and that person was like, you know what? Hey, when you get to 2 or 3 trucks, give me a shout. We'll do some business together.
mm,
And because they had a respect for how that person operates, and so I think brand, it can cost you almost nothing to just make sure you are presenting yourself in the
yeah.
most professional manner. And that's literally the first step in any marketing, is making sure that uh, you are representing what you want your company to be seen as. If you go in there dressed sloppy, and not really caring,
Yeah.
and not wanting to deal with the people, or arguing with someone, or whatever it may be, it's not going to be as good for your brand. And so when you have a really good impression on someone, it's only going to help you.
And and I think that we talk about it a lot in playbook, that one of the things is that your logo on the side of the truck, is you're representative of it. You represent yourself. And this industry, man, just to if you just want to call it what it is, man, it sometimes professionalism doesn't line up at the top of the list. When you think about all of the industries out there, your real estate, banking, finance, the medical world, this one's very unique. It's very unique, and you see the sometimes decency doesn't land. Decency and professional doesn't land at the top. And I'm glad you mentioned that. Hey, you know what? Even if it's just you, and just clean up. Just throw a collared shirt on there. It's easy for you to respond back with the same energy from a broker that may not be as professional. So it's easy to give that energy back. But ultimately, how far is that going to take you? Winning that argument, or Rob cusses me out and we turn around and cusses back at him. How far is that going to take me? You wonder. And I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because I think that that's so important. And when you talk about differentiation, what separates you from the next person, a lot of times it's your professionalism at the end of the day.
Yep. I mean, it's a service industry. I mean, we're providing a service to folks, and people, in order to differentiate yourself from other people that are doing the same thing as you. I mean, I see the numbers. I mean, there's thousands of trucking companies opening up every month. There's also thousands going
Out
out
of
of business
business.
every month.
Yep.
And so, how is it that you're going to be different than all those folks that are out there? How can you put yourself in a different light? How are these, not only if it's a broker or a shipper or whoever it is, but how can you differentiate yourself from them? And I think it starts with that professionalism, answering the phone call with your simple things like, hey, this is ABC Trucking Company.
Right.
This is Rob. How can I help you?
Yeah.
And answering the phone in a professional manner, you can almost start a conversation off in a better way with someone when you answer it that way.
That's right.
And I get it. You're getting hundreds of phone calls, and you get tired of it sometimes. But at the end of the day, it's not that hard. It's not hard to do that. To just, what, okay, I'm having a bad day, but I'm still going to answer this phone call the right way, and I'm still going to treat this person with respect. And it'll go a long way. Trust me, if you continue to be consistent with that, not only with the brand of your company, but also with just your daily, attitude and your daily, it'll help you stay more positive in the business. It'll help you do all these things, and it'll come through in a lot of other areas that you don't even think of.
Absolutely. Now, as we begin to wrap up, I want to talk a little bit about what's next for TAFS and industry. And you mentioned you're working on new product offerings at TAFS. Can you share anything about how those tools are going to be built to make drivers and owner ops, small carriers' lives easier out there? If you can share anything.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, the big trigger word out there, the big keyword that everybody says is AI, and so you hear about AI all the time throughout the entire trucking industry. And I think it's the same in factoring. Factoring companies, I know definitely that probably the top 10 factoring companies out there are really looking at ways to improve their efficiency, their consistency, and the availability. I know the biggest thing out there that a lot of companies are trying to deal with is the payment structure, the system that's out there. And payments used to be, you're worried about ACHs and wires coming into your
Yeah.
account.
Yeah.
And so one of the biggest things out there right now that is kind of changing the industry is the digitization and the and whatnot of the banking industry, and Fed Now and some of these things that are happening to where you don't have to just do these things that are during bankers hours anymore. And so factoring companies are going to have to start changing the way that they do business when it comes to, well, I only want to do ACHs and wires or send it onto a fuel card. Now there's going to be ways that people can get money 24/7.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's going to be great for the trucking industry. is when everybody starts offering, this type of stuff. And then the same thing from the risk perspective, what we have to do is whenever we receive the paperwork from a trucking company is we have to have people look at it, and they have to make evaluations on, well, does this look real? Is this the right, broker? Is this load number the right thing? Is all the stuff there that needs to be there? And so with AI coming in, you're going to see a lot more factoring companies be able to view this paperwork in a quicker fashion with AI, and let it give us red flags on anything that they think needs to be adjusted or sent back. And so it'll increase the speed of service for trucking companies. And so if with a combination of those two things, you're going to see, payments that can happen. You can submit an invoice 24 hours a day, and then you can also get paid 24 hours a day. You don't have to just wait till the next day for things to come in. And I think that's one of the biggest things that's coming in. And then the same thing, like the more cost savings a factoring company can generate, it also allows them to be more aggressive with the rates, which again, lower rates for trucking companies is a good thing for those guys. It helps their cost of invoice and helps their, how they work with a factoring company. Because if you're able to do a whole bunch of things like help your billing and collecting, get you your credit checks, do all these different things in a much faster manner and a quicker manner, then that makes factoring just look more attractive to you.
That's right.
Because you're like, you know what, it doesn't cost that much anymore. It's a much cheaper option than what the alternatives are that are out there. And so I think that's the biggest next thing for just the entire industry and not just us. Granted, we are working on that stuff as well, but I think that's a big piece of this industry. And then same thing, having all those payments, integrate with a fuel card and really continue to dig deeper on fuel discounts and helping carriers there.
100%. And it's been an awesome conversation. And you brought a lot that I think that really, if you look down into it deeply as a small carrier, there's so many options out there for you to be able to manage the actual financial component of it. But most importantly is what you talked about is really understanding, hey, your top expenses, understanding those things, understanding how to manage cash, because that's so important in this business. For the folks that want to reach out to you, or want to connect with you, or want to connect with TAFS, or get more information about TAFS and what TAFS offers, how could they do so?
Yeah, so mainly the website is a great place to start, tafs.com. And we have a phone number that, that goes directly to our sales team. If you're interested in that stuff, you want to talk to some other folks, 913-393-6100 is a phone number there. Again, if anybody wants to reach out to me, I prefer they do it on LinkedIn. And I try to be pretty active on that platform in the trucking industry, whether it's, looking at some of the other content that's out there, educational type things. But feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's Rob McCutcheon, VP Strategy and Growth at TAFS.
Well, awesome. Man, that's a wrap with Rob McCutcheon. And thank you again for joining us. If you're not looking at your fuel spend factoring terms and cash flow like a business owner after this episode, then you're already behind. The game ain't about hauling freight. It's about keeping what you earn. If something hit home today, go back and replay it. And if you've been winging it with your numbers, it might be the time to get serious. Again, appreciate Rob for pulling back the curtain on how money really moves in this business. And thank you so much for joining us on The Long Haul.
Thanks, Adam.
Well, everybody, it's a wrap. And again, excited as we go through with these conversations to help move your business forward. Looking forward on seeing you on our next episode of The Long Haul. Take care and be safe.